in his good gray spring suit, I see.
Right, springtime.
Hello, everyone here and in the audience. Welcome to...
Konnichiwa, Nadiska.
Welcome to Tuesday, April 2nd's Wenham Board of Selectmen's meeting. As we have in the past few meetings, we have already, this meeting's been called to order and has been in executive session from 5:30 till now, shortly before now. We are adjourned from executive session into open session, and so we will begin the open session as we do, and this time I think we actually will have some participation, but as we do, with public input for items that are not on the agenda. And I think that we have a guest, a familiar guest. If you'd introduce yourself, tell us where you live. Happy to have you.
Man behind you, too.
Yeah. Oh, you know him? Hi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zoe Tang. I live on 23 Wenham Road.
Hi, Zoe.
I am a fourth grade student at Beaker
I don't think the
Elementary
mic is
School.
on.
And tonight I'm representing Early Act, a service club at Beaker. Early Act is organizing a textile drive. We are asking for donations of clothing, bed sheets, ripped clothes, and even that lonely one mitten or shoe. We would really love to have the entire Wenham community participate in this drive. People from Wenham are encouraged to bring their donation bags to Beaker School during town meeting. Our goal this year is 225 bags. We are asking that donations be in 13-gallon or larger bags. Things you may not think of bringing and are allowed to are pocketbooks, napkins, comforters, shoes, boots, and many more. I have for you a list of the acceptable items for donation. We are accepting donations at Beaker School until May 29th.
Ah, okay.
Nice.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, okay, so that's, you can leave that
So
with us.
maybe we could put
Good.
that
You
on
can
the
get that on the website?
or something? Yeah.
I think we did last
What
year,
was,
too.
how many bags do you remember? Did
Yeah.
you collect last year? Did you have a new goal this year? Is it more? Is the goal this year higher than last year is really what I'm wondering.
Last year we had a goal of 160, and I think we went over.
I think they try to pick the number of bags of what is now quorum. We'll see.
Oh. How civic-minded. And so easy to remember. It's a great fundraiser, and thank you for sharing that information with us.
Yes.
I hope you reach your goal. You'll have to
Great.
get a message back to us on how well you did. May 29th, you said, was the last day? Okay. Okay, next on our agenda are announcements, and Jack has those.
Lucky me.
And there's a few of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are soliciting letters of interest for a town administrator screening committee, always a popular, although once every several years, committee. The Board of Selectmen is looking for up to 7 residents who would like to participate on a town administrator screening committee. It's a very important committee, by the way. This group will be responsible for matching candidates to criteria set up by the selectmen and townspeople with the goal of recommending the finalists who will be interviewed for selection by the Board of Selectmen. If you or someone you know is interested, please send a letter of interest to Anna Roebuck at wenhammass.gov, wenhamma.gov, NROEBUCK at WENHAMMA.gov on or before April 22nd of this year. The commitment for this committee will likely include attending a few meetings, evening meetings lasting from 1 to 2 hours, and one Saturday meeting lasting approximately, I want to say this, 5 to 6 hours. It
All day.
It says 7 to 8, but it's really, if I'm there, it'll be 5 to 6 or less.
You won't be there, Jack. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, in spirit, I will be.
Yeah.
These meetings will likely be held in May or June. Next, extremely important, our annual town meeting will be held Saturday, April 6th at 1 p.m. in the Perkins Auditorium. Check-in with the Board of Registrars will begin at 12 p.m., so come early for check-in and join the Wenham Village Improvement Society for the annual town luncheon in the multi-purpose room. New this year, seat cushions will be available to rent. Really? What does it cost?
It's a donation at will.
I think some folks in the audience at the Warren hearing last night could have used them. They might have come in handy.
They were saying, I
just-
wish we had a cushion. I heard that. I wish we had a
So I think they will be
Tempur-Pedic cushion.
a hot
I
item.
thought originally we were going to sell them.
It's a,
What do you do
Did I
after?
misunderstand?
it's a donation at will.
Right.
You get a cushion.
Okay.
You leave it on your chair when you're
It
done.
doesn't say how much
Oh,
they
okay.
cost, though.
Like a library book.
Because you
Oh,
put
I
in
see.
as much as
Okay.
you want or as
You use
little
it
as
for
you
a few
want.
We're
hours.
not asking for a specific dollar amount. We're just looking for donations.
Well, it says rent, doesn't say, rent for a donation to the Albert E. Dodge Memorial Tree Fund. Excuse me, established to support planting of new trees throughout Wenham.
So the idea is all the money that's collected
Yeah.
is going to go to the tree fund, not to pay for the cushions.
Now, if you cannot attend the meeting, or you want to watch it later on, or whatever, this will be live on HWCam at Comcast Channel 22 and Verizon Channel 37. If you're indisposed and you can't make the meeting, we hope you can be there because we need a quorum. Page 1. Was that Paul Harvey that,
Yeah, the rest
Yeah,
of the story.
rest of the-
there's the rest of the story.
The rest of the story.
The Hamilton Wenham Regional High School National Honor Society is offering a kids' town meeting with crafts, games, and movies, and a movie, at the Recreation Center from 1 to 4 p.m., with check-in beginning at 12:45 p.m. Visit the town website for a sign-up link. Next, Candidates Night by the League of Women Voters. Come to Candidates Night presented by the League of Women Voters on Hamilton Wenham, League of Women Voters of Hamilton Wenham on Wednesday, April 3rd, tomorrow night, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Buca Elementary School in the multipurpose room. Our annual town elections will be held at the Town Hall on Thursday, April 11th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are available in the clerk's office until noon on Wednesday, April 10th. Next, as good weather quickly approaches, we hope so,
That's it.
including today, although it's supposed to rain.
Yeah, gale warning
Late
out
tonight
this
or
afternoon.
tomorrow.
Yeah, and maybe a little snowflakes tonight. But
Yeah.
as the good weather approaches,
It
as you were
approaches.
saying,
Might snow
Approaches.
Saturday, Jack.
And if you have signs out there, you have to make sure that the Board of Health would like to remind residents of the procedure for excluding the property from mosquito spraying. Residents who wish to be excluded if a spraying were to occur must request to be excluded every year. Residents can submit a form, obviously, online or in mail, the exclusion form into the state on a rolling basis. Residents can submit the form online or mail the exclusion form into the state. We have to send it to the state?
yep,
Really? Sounds like
There used to be a deadline, as I recall.
there did, and it was
now it's
like
a-
March 1.
Right,
It was
now
not when
it's-
people were actually thinking about mosquito spraying, so they've
Mailing-
made it a little more user-friendly.
and on a rolling basis. What the heck does that mean? Residents can submit a form online?
Anytime they
Anytime.
want.
Oh, they could have said anytime instead of rolling basis.
Well, now we've said it.
Now we've said it. Whoever wrote this, I want to see in my office as soon as this is over.
It's
Request will
probably-
go into effect 14 days after the exclusion.
That's a recent college student who might have
On a
applied to
rolling
college
basis.
on a rolling
Basis.
basis, as opposed to with a
I
deadline.
just stole the language from the state website.
Oh, maybe. There you go. You should
You
talk
could
to
improve
them.
upon that.
Talk to the state.
These are my announcements now,
Yeah,
my
go
fellow
for it.
selectmen.
Go for it. Wouldn't want to
Sorry,
step on your
Jack, we didn't
toes.
mean to impose.
I ad lib as will, and so that's my prior. A request will go into effect 14 days after the exclusion request is received. More information can be found on the Board of Health website on the mosquito information page. We have a mosquito information page, by God almighty, by emailing permitting@wenhammass.gov, or by calling 978-468-5520, extension 4. Is that your extension, Jackie?
Yeah.
Ask for Jackie,
Jack,
our mosquito control warden.
It's
yeah.
a new title.
It's a new one.
She's going to ask for an increase in pay
Yes.
for that.
She doesn't bite either. Visit the town website for more information on these and other news items.
So, may I ask a question, Jackie? I think I ask this every year, but I seem to forget the answer. So, the actual being excluded from spraying, the way I understand it, if spraying were to occur,
If spring is going to occur?
spraying,
Oh.
a truck drives down the street and sprays. And if my property is excluded, A, how do they know that my property has been excluded? And B, how do they actually exclude it?
Will they actually pay attention to it?
Well, I'm assuming that they will. I just don't know how they know, and I feel like they just, that stuff is a liquid
They take a big
aerosol.
plastic bag and put it over your
Well, I
house.
wish that were the case.
Well, and I will say this is a very, very important issue for we have a lot of folks in town actually that do beekeeping, so this is a high priority for those folks. But the machine, learned about this last year. There's a GIS-based list. So they take the list, they put it into a GIS program that's in the truck. And so the GIS program is managing when the machine's going off and coming back on. So it's not, a human user.
Pushing a button.
Yeah, it's
in
not
the
a
truck.
button. They have it all like in a GIS program, and they actually track all of their vehicles around the entire North Shore, so they know where every vehicle goes and where it sprayed and where it didn't, that they keep at the Northeast office.
So what that means then is if I were a person who asked for an exclusion, when they got to my property line based on their GIS computer, they stop spraying, and then when they get to the other end of the property line, they start spraying again.
Correct.
There's not like a buffer.
Right, I'm thinking about, if my next door neighbor has bees,
Does he?
2 doors down, yes, I believe, and so this is an aerosol.
It
So
is.
I guess I'm thinking maybe he should ask his neighbor, a few neighbors on either side to not be sprayed.
Well, and I will say it's coming from the street, and it can only go so far into the property. So I believe most of the people that are keeping bees do keep them further towards the back of their property and not in that front yard setback. I will also say that typically we put this out every year. We come to the Board of Selectmen and announce it, and it's always a hot topic at the Selectmen and not really anywhere else other than maybe with the Mass Audubon, because they do this annually for their properties, this exclusion process. But even last year, we did have a positive test for West Nile virus, and the Board of Health determined that they weren't going to spray because it does provide a false sense of security for people who do like the spraying to occur. You may not put bug spray on. The spraying is a one-time, the mosquitoes in the air type of occurrence, so it's really not as potent as I think some people want it to be, and it's more potent than others. Some people don't want to have it at all. So something that I should have included in this year's new announcement is that prevention is key, wearing the appropriate clothing, mosquito, bug spray, and that's why we have a mosquito information page now, as with all this prevention information, and we do post prevention information at all the public playing fields and parks. So that spraying is just a one-time into the front of properties to kill the mosquitoes in the air at the time. So that's why we always say if it were to occur, but we do want to give this information out there because it is an annual request. And for those folks with bees, which we do have more than you'd expect, we want to make sure they know, now's the time to get that request in before the season begins.
Okay.
Jackie,
Thank you.
are there guidelines or regulations on the wind velocity and direction? Because that would have a pretty major impact, because that mist will carry even beyond the mechanical limits.
Well, and I will say, John, that's where the Northeast Control Board has scientists that are bug scientists, weather scientists, people who are not me, who are scientists, who can answer those questions much better. But they consider all those factors. Time of day goes into it as well before
They dispatch.
Yeah, and they review the chemicals that they're using every year to make sure that they're what they're supposed to be using, and looking at the ingredients and everything. So happy to pass along those questions and pass back some
I
answers.
just find it kind of interesting altogether that they do this. And I was out on Sunday afternoon. Of course, I found a tick already and took care of that.
well.
But, ticks are just incessant. Well, mosquitoes,
But that's,
much similar. They're going to be here. And no matter what you do, as you're saying, this is a one-time shot, and it may kill a pile of them today, but a week from now, they may all be back.
Yeah, don't let this bug you, John, don't let this bug you.
I won't let you.
So that, how many people opt to be excluded? Do you have any statistics on that?
So when we used to manage the process, and this is 3 or 4 years ago now, that the state took over this tracking process, I want to say we had about 15 to 20 a year, but some of those being very large property owners, such as the Mass Autobahn.
I see. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
And Jackie, to your point, even when we had positive tests in the past couple of years,
Yeah.
the Board of Health ultimately has decided not to do a spraying in response to those positive tests.
Because
not
they
wanting to
don't-
create a false sense of security, because it's that one-time moment of where the mosquitoes in the air are the ones that are being eradicated.
And there were also not multiple positive tests. I mean, it was
There was,
it
I
was
think,
relatively
2
isolated.
weeks.
2 weeks in
Yeah.
a row for the iron rail.
Yeah, and so we do have a mosquito listserv now for all of our outdoor folks, because we do want to keep them in the loop and reminding them about this
And
prevention.
how does one get onto that list?
If you are in any of our outdoor sports groups,
I
garden club, but if you'd like to be added in general,
Just see Jackie
see Jackie Bressingham in the permitting office. We'll insect
bee.
you into the list. If we're gonna go with bug puns, we'll insect you into the list.
Oh,
Be great.
So just the last thing about that, which is going to elude me in a second, mosquitoes.
I think it was maybe
it's
ticks.
No, ticks
Oh, okay.
is,
Yeah.
we had a different meeting a few weeks ago where this issue of mosquitoes came up as a priority for the community, and on a separate topic that we'll talk about another time, I brought up the issue of the fact that ticks probably carry and cause more disease in the town of Wenham than mosquitoes do, but we don't really seem to do anything about ticks, but for another
Yeah,
topic.
sorry.
But on mosquitoes, now I've forgotten it again. This spraying is part of a more comprehensive program for
Correct.
mosquito control,
And
right?
it's something we're taking more advantage of. We have an entire exterior pest control management plan through the Northeast Control Board. It's reflected on our cherry sheet every year as a service that we provide. We do larviciding, which is treating the catch basins. So after Bill Tyak and the DPW clean the catch basins, those are treated. Different other small bodies of water where collection and creation could occur, treated. And we have a whole management plan in the Board of Health office for folks that are interested in more on this topic.
So that's good.
But
Great. All right. Thank you.
That
Thank you,
concludes my
Jack.
announcements.
Thank you, sir. Including the ad lib.
Including the ad lib, it's free.
Do you have a town administrator
I
report?
do not.
Okay. So I do have a chairman's report tonight. Because tonight is Peter's last official meeting of the Board of Selectmen as town administrator in the town of Wenham. And so it didn't feel right to not acknowledge that. So I do want to acknowledge that this is his last meeting. We'll be seeing him. I think he's still planning on coming to town meeting, and I believe his last day of work is next
Then we'll have to watch him
next
on another
Friday.
station.
Right, a different station. But I just wanted to take a moment, and my colleagues can as well. We don't do big speeches. I don't do big speeches, but I think there really aren't words to thank Peter enough for everything that you have done for the town and in the town of Wenham in the fairly short period of time that you were here. But if we think back to when Peter started and the challenges that he faced and the community faced and where we are now, I think there's been a lot of progress. And I started to make a little list, and then I decided it was getting too long. And I promised myself I wouldn't make a speech. But when I think of Peter and the work that he does and him as a town administrator, I think of words like integrity and communication skills and transparency, things that he's brought to the town, his work ethic. I think those things are unparalleled, and I think they've done great things for the town of Wenham. You know that we will miss you and we wish you well, and I thank you for being here,
Thanks very much.
for your work. So I just wanted to not let this last meeting go by and people were like, what happened? Didn't
Did he
you know what
go?
happened?" And by the way, as a further announcement, I put this in here to remind me, there will be a reception, a drop-in
Oh, that's
reception for
right,
Peter, Tuesday, April 9th, that's a week from tonight, at Burnham Hall from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Light refreshments, and everyone in town is welcome and we hope will attend to wish Peter well. So that's the chairman's.
Commissioner Peter, great job.
Yeah, yeah, we will. Okay. We have a consent agenda tonight.
Well, I just
which-
wanted to add one more thing
Oh,
to
certainly,
to the
please.
Peter issue, or thought.
Issue.
Hopefully there's not an issue.
Yeah,
My last meeting.
want to add an issue.
First of all, I want to thank you for putting up with me. I know it's not easy at times,
Big thanks for that. When did I thank? When's he
so
gonna
thank you.
us?
And also, thank you for sharing your family with us.
Mm-hmm.
They're wonderful folks, your son, your wife, and even the pooch. You know, they came to so many events over the last few years.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, and thank you for the work that you have done. I've seen where you've both grown and shown a lot of strength for the benefit of this town. Your negotiating skills have been superb. Your insight into things and programs that need attention. Sometimes you bury us in detail, like it's this thick.
Guilty as charged.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's all been appreciated, so thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Well, thanks, John. And thanks to all of you. It's obviously been a wonderful experience. It's hard for me to imagine that this is my last meeting.
I know, it
Probably
doesn't
won't
seem real.
realize it until a few days down the line. You've been a great group to work with. It's been wonderful to get to know all of you professionally, personally. You know, I grew up just around the corner, so it means a lot to be in this position and work in this town. It's a great place, a lot of really good people, residents who spend a lot of their time volunteering for the town, outstanding staff, and I just can't say enough about the opportunity that this board gave me to serve the town and hopefully make a difference and put things in a better place to move forward. So thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
We'll miss you.
Yeah, we will. We're
Miss you
probably not
already.
even going to know how much we miss him until he's gone.
Oh, yes, the consent agenda. Thank you.
Consent agenda, which John Clemenzi has this evening,
All right,
which has a motion, I guess.
yeah, there's sort of a motion here. I move to approve all items, there are two, on the consent agenda as presented. There are two items on there.
Two?
One is a one-day liquor license requested by Kathleen Feldman, who is with the Wenham Museum. And she has filled in all of her requirements and forms, and made payment and so forth. The police have signed off on it, and everything looks like it's in good shape. The second is First Dibs Shop and Sip. Oh, I'm
It's all
sorry.
the
that's-
same event.
Yeah.
Yep, just so
Oh,
it's
it's
just the one event.
Oh, I thought I saw a second one on, okay, I guess.
It looks like two events, John. It could have been written
Does.
differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Attic treasures and then first.
You're forgiven.
Any questions or comments on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Thank you.
Unanimous.
And that's all I have for
Okay,
that.
we move on to new business. The first item under new business, we have the beginning of our appointment season. So we have a couple of appointments, and those are with Jack.
We actually have three.
Several appointments, sorry. I said a couple, that's two.
I'm an accountant, I count. We have a letter of interest from Harriet Davis, who's right in front of me, and that she, again, wants to be in the Cemetery Commission. Doesn't get a lot of feedback from her constituents, so that's why she actually is. So I move to appoint Harry P. Davis to the Cemetery Commission for a term beginning April 12th, 2019, ending June 30th, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Harriet.
I just want.
Yes, I did vote for you,
Just
Harry.
make a comment on that I believe the reason that we're doing this is
Yeah.
because, is it 2 years ago now, or last?
This is the last cemetery commission position that is transitioning from being elected to appointed, which is why the term date is
Right.
a little different than what you'd expect to see.
Right, so we just wanted to clarify that. Okay, I'm
Well,
sorry,
thank you
Jack.
for your service, too.
Yes, continuing serving your constituents well.
The real workhorse for the committee is the chairman, Gary Peterson, who is phenomenal in his role.
He's done a good job.
It's been very helpful in the
For
Veterans Committee as well. Next, we have I move the Board of Selectmen jointly appoint. Jointly appoint?
No, it's just a point, sorry, that's,
Brian M. Leith as building inspector for a term, he's our current building inspector, for a term expiring, I presume, beginning today, and expiring March 31, 2020. Doesn't say when we, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Brian. And we have one more. Will do. I got it right. I move to appoint Richard P. Maloney as local inspector. What is a local inspector?
okay, so a little,
Okay, you go. I did find out about this
Okay.
because I talked to Lath.
why don't you make the motion
the
and
motion
second,
and then-
I refuse to budge on this. A
We don't have to pass the motion. just
local
make-
inspector for a term beginning April 2nd, 2019, and ending March 31, 2020. Now, what is a local inspector?
Okay.
That was my question, too.
Local inspector is the backup building inspector. So we have
Okay.
an appointed building inspector. We have, under our shared new, still new, 6 months in, shared dispatch, or excuse me, shared
Shared-
inspection service program, shared dispatch, yep.
That was last week.
Exactly. We have not had a backup for our building inspector, and Rich is the lead inspector over in Danvers, and has volunteered to, well, I shouldn't say volunteered, he will be compensated, but he's extended his willingness to serve in this capacity when we need some fill-in, when Brian is unavailable.
I went through his resume. I got to tell you, this man is quite qualified.
Yes.
Very much so.
Got some
Had a lot of
tremendous
experience, yeah.
background experience.
And he was somebody who Jackie and I interacted with when we were
Really, huh?
initially looking for a partner for shared inspectional services, and met with the folks over in Danvers a couple of years ago now. And his resume is impressive. He's an impressive guy when you meet with him, and certainly has great experience, and will be great to be able to fill in. We will be, I'll make a note, the board can expect another request for an appointment for a second local inspector at your next meeting. The backup building inspector in Middleton would also be appointed, and that's just a matter of having sufficient coverage.
So we'll have two
So you'll have two.
reservists. or
Correct.
whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah, we just, I don't think we have a second yet.
No.
Do I hear a second? I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Appointed.
I think this is
Unanimous.
good also for another reason, not just to have a backup when somebody is on vacation, but also for a consult.
Yeah, and I will say,
When there's an issue of
Sure.
some sort that could go one way or another, to have another professional, I forget the term that's used, but we've used it many times.
yeah,
in a lot of
so.
our projects.
So Brian is very involved both kind of regionally and statewide with his professional association. So he already has a pretty good group of folks that he can reach out to, and does on a regular basis, in terms of asking, I'm dealing with this, what have you done, how have you handled that, and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, but it's certainly not going to hurt in terms of having a little bit more expertise when it comes to issues that come up.
I mean, not that we have a lot of complex issues, but I'm sure there's
Maybe
times.
more
when-
than you.
I would say I have more inquiries and complaints that we need the building inspector to inspect something or other.
Yeah.
In my last 3 years or 6 years, that a lot of people have issues they want the building inspector to adjudicate.
I think we have less issues, but no less complex
Right,
than a larger municipality.
right. And a lot of building. A lot of new building that's
A lot
going
of
on.
homeowner issues with their neighbors, things like
Yeah,
that.
that
We're
too.
all familiar with that. And
Yeah.
We've all had the calls and emails, and so it's helpful to have somebody who's impartial, knows what he's doing, or she's doing, in this case, he. So it's good to, and he's comes highly appraised.
Yeah, I think he's.
I'm done with the announcements.
Okay. Okay. And we're done with the item B on new business and ready to move on to item C, which is review and potential approval of employment agreements with the library director and the DPW director. Jack, you're on a roll. That's your item as well.
Gee, I looked at that, and it,
I mean, I think there are two
There are two motions.
two motions
okay, right.
with tabs, separate motions.
Yep. All righty. First is the library director contract. And by the way, Jan, we'll miss you. I vote to approve an employment agreement with Kimberly Butler to serve as the library director for a 3-year term commencing April 29th, 2019, and an initial probationary period through December 31, 2019, and a starting annual salary of $76,840.40.
Don't forget the 40 cents, Jack.
We could not make this an even number. Okay,
It's a calculation.
right, for fiscal 19. Do I hear a second?
I would second your motion with the question of, will she be available to meet with us at some point so that we put a name to a
Be
face?
nice to
and-
meet her.
Sure, yeah, I can certainly,
On
so
the
her,
list.
yeah, her starting date's obviously the end of April, and I can
So maybe she
coordinate
could
with
come to our
the,
next end of the month meeting or something?
yeah, I'll reach out to the chair of the Board of Library Trustees and check on her availability. I think it'd be nice to have the
Yeah.
board representation there and
Yeah.
Kim there as well.
Yeah.
When I say
it would be-
we meet her, also the audience, the folks at home,
Yeah.
get a chance
Many
to see who she
people
is.
may meet her before we get a chance to,
Probably.
just by going into the library, but I think it's great if she can come and we can say hi and welcome her.
All right, thank you, Peter.
Yep.
As I shared with my two colleagues earlier this evening, that I'm very impressed when I drive by the library, which I do frequently these days, on sign patrol, to see just how busy the parking lot is outside when they open up in the morning. It is totally full, and that it's amazing, and that I go in there occasionally as well. So congratulations, Jan Dempsey, on your retirement, first of all, and making our joint library such a success. We really appreciate that. Secondly, and good luck. Vote, I move to approve the proposed terms of the DPW Director.
Oh, we did vote on that? Did we vote? No. Okay. We
Let's
didn't vote.
back up. Too bad we can't erase, the
Yeah.
first.
Just back up the tape a little.
Yeah.
Can I just make a
The
quick
tape,
comment?
the tape delay?
A little white out?
Yeah, can I just make a quick
Let's
comment
make the
before
comment
we
after we do
vote?
the votes. I don't want to screw this up
Well,
again.
this is part of the discussion for the library director.
Yeah, I want to, let's
You
have
want
a-
to vote first, and then you want me to comment?
Yeah.
Sure, okay, whatever. It's not going to change my vote, so go for
I
it.
don't want to miss it.
No,
Mess
go
it
right
up
ahead.
once, twice as.
Go right ahead.
What's the expression? Once, shame on me.
Yeah.
Shame on you.
So-
Okay, all those in
GW
favor?
got that right.
Aye,
Aye.
unanimous.
So it's
Yes.
unanimous.
Go ahead, Gary.
So my comment only is
But that was a tough one.
I had the pleasure of being here for the interviews of Kimberly and the other person that interviewed. I found her to be, seems to be, in the short time I saw her, competent, and I think she will be a good fit for our regional library. And I also wanted to thank the library trustees who put a lot of work and effort into this process, and I'm sure are relieved that, that this is actually, that they've come to someone, they were very thorough in their deliberation to come to choose this person, and I wish them all the luck and her luck as well. That's all. And we've already voted, so we can go right
And one of
on.
those library trustees who was on the search committee for the librarian caught me when I was over there at Jan's retirement celebration and asked if it would be possible for her to get onto the group that is going to be evaluating for a new town administrator.
Oh, so
And
she
I
needs to
said,
send in a letter of
"Please
interest.
send in a letter right away."
Get those in.
And that was having served on the screening committee, it was a great group. We had a really strong applicant pool. So I think the town and the board can feel confident that, Kim really rose to the top of what was a competitive process. You never know going into it what the applicant pool is going to look like, and we were very happy. We had 6 semifinalists in for interviews, and even out of that field, there were a number of very solid candidates, so.
Thought it was close even between the finalists.
I think
couldn't-
the board agreed.
Yeah, as evidenced by the amount of time it took them to actually decide.
Yep.
But it was great, so. Okay,
Okay, moving on.
DPW.
I move to approve the proposed terms of the DPW Director contract for a period from July 1, 2019 to June 30, 2022, and to include a cost of living increases of 2% for each fiscal year.
I will second your motion.
Obviously, we're talking about Bill Tyak, by the way.
Yes, sir.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Any comments?
No, Bill, thank you very much for
Yep.
so many years of service, and we look forward to another 3 years of continued good service. You put out a lot and look for very little back, so.
Yeah, we thank him.
we
He's
wanna
always there.
recognize you. Yep, yep.
Pleased.
I know that's...
Leaves or snow or anything else.
That's true.
Okay.
Okay.
Lastly,
Is there- That's it. Isn't that it?
Yep.
I was just on a roll here.
I know.
You're just gonna keep making
I was
motions
gonna
for the whole
say,
packet.
you want to point
I'll
me to
give it to you when
something?
I get to Jay.
Yeah, I think maybe
Yeah,
we
that's
should.
fine. No, go ahead,
Okay.
please.
So the next item under new business, item D, is not really new for us, but review and potential approval of the Affordable Housing Trust loan agreement with Habitat for Humanity North Shore for 40 Hull Street. That's my item, and I'm just, if I may, give it a little bit of background. Following the normal process, now it seems like some time ago, the Affordable Housing Trust recommended to the Board of Selectmen a grant to Habitat for Humanity for a project at 40 Hull Street. This board saw that recommendation and approved it and voted to approve it, but contingent upon having a grant agreement that lays out all of the, what would they be called? All of the
Terms and conditions.
terms and conditions of what this is actually going to, what this grant is actually going to look like. So what we have in our books is actually maybe the third iteration. The trust, the Affordable Housing Trust saw it. Don Preston from Habitat for Humanity saw the initial version. The trust had some, well, it was originally written as a full grant, a full straight-out grant, and it was actually intended to be a loan. So this has been rewritten and structured as a loan. So it's been back and forth a few times. It's my understanding now that the Affordable Housing Trust is fine with this language, that Don Preston
Who's here?
is here. Oh, Don, come on
He's
up.
fine, he's fine.
He's fine, you're
Yep.
okay with this language?
Yes.
Great. And so it is, I think, left for us to approve the loan agreement for Habitat, and then Don can continue. He has already received his comprehensive permit from the ZBA with a couple of conditions, which he's quite well aware of and may already be resolved. So, he doesn't know this yet, but I think the trust is going to invite him back soon for an update. But this project is, well on its way from a permitting point of view. Anyway, so the last step, paperwork-wise, from us is to approve this, the latest loan agreement. I don't actually have a motion written. Oh, maybe I do.
You do.
I'm sure I do. Yeah. So I move to approve the proposed loan agreement for $230,000 between the Town of Wenham, acting by and through the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and Habitat for Humanity North Shore, Inc., to be used for the project at 40 Hull Street, Wenham. Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Last night, there was question
Yep.
about how this is all going to work
Sure.
and their funding. Has that been identified and resolved at this point? or-
We heard the question last night. I asked all three non-town entities that have applied for CPA funds,
Yeah.
the extent to which not receiving either the full amount or any amount of CPA funds on Saturday, whether those were approved or not by town meeting, how that will impact their project in moving forward. And I asked Don the same question, and, you know, I think the response is it will certainly delay the project if the CPA funding isn't approved by town meeting. Wouldn't necessarily mean that the project wouldn't move forward, but there obviously would be a need to secure funding from another source in the meantime. So I know that Don was in my office today and is putting in an application, or has already submitted an application to the North Shore Home Consortium. Their deadline is this week for the RFP that they issued a month or so ago, seeking projects, and applied for $80,000, and that's also what was in your pro forma that you submitted to the CPC.
Do you mind coming up, just so we can ask you a question, maybe you can answer to the public's ears as well?
Yep.
How are you, Don?
Good to see you.
You too, sir.
So, go ahead, Ken.
No, I was going to say, so the question, which is Peter is, I think, trying to answer, that came up at our warrant hearing was, you know, there's $30,000 that's going before the 60,000, as I said it, I knew that wasn't right, going before the town meeting on Saturday as a recommendation from the CPC. That will be voted on by town meeting, but the question came up in the event that that amount is not appropriated or approved, or in full or not at all, would you still be able to move forward with the project?
Well, it would delay the project.
And I think that's what.
Well, what does delay mean? It's
Well,
not going to curtail it, or crush it, or cause it to not happen, or it may slow it down by a week, or
It'll slow it down by more than a
can't paint
week.
the house because there isn't enough fund, or yeah.
We have a funding package that if everything comes in from Federal Home Loan Bank, from the Home Consortium, from the assorted banks that we apply for and historically have gotten grants from, and from the CPA, then we have a funded package. If we fall short, then yes, at some point, we have to stop and wait until we get that funding. And that's other grants from other sources.
So there's other sources that are in the wings or could be.
We'd have to find them. I mean, that is definitely.
So thus the term delayed.
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't stop the paint from going on or whatever it gets.
I think you're saying it stops the paint from going on, John. Unless
Yes.
they get the funds, it's halted. Am I correct?
Yes,
That's
I can go as far as I can go with the funding I have.
Okay, so you will continue the project, just that you may have a stop at some point.
Exactly.
Until you can catch up. Okay.
Yes.
I understand. All right.
So
What he's saying is he can't complete the project without these funds. He's going to have to
Right.
fund someplace else
Yep.
to replace them.
Got it.
Am I correct?
Right.
That is correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, much like Harbor Light and the Community House, all three projects are depending on funding from a variety of sources and have requests out for those sources. And if funding doesn't sort out with one or several of them, then they're going to have to reshuffle.
I thought it was a very good question that somebody asked to find out, so thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. How's everything else going, since you're standing there?
Well, everything is contingent at this point on us having site control
Right.
and
Which you won't
this
have
going
to
through.
this
I have a
latter.
very
That's why he's here
anxious,
tonight.
Why did I even ask that question? I knew the answer.
I have a very anxious seller
Yep.
who has been on the line with us since May.
Yes. Very patient.
Very patient, and we need to get past this before I can engage with engineering
Right.
to go over the hookup to the sewer district, and then site engineering for us to start the work.
Right. And the Affordable Housing Trust has had this on our agenda for several meetings to discuss some small changes, and so we've taken a pretty close, the trust has taken a pretty close look at it.
And we've had town council look at it, and
Right.
Don's had his council look at it, and everybody's had their fingers in it in
Everybody's-
one form or fashion.
So now it's in a form that everyone who needs to has agreed.
Correct.
All the parties. Okay. Any other questions for Don?
I'm all set, thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
discussion? If not, all in favor of granting this grant?
All right?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
And I presume you'll
luck.
be able to get the
Good luck.
paperwork from,
Yep, we've got it in the packet for tonight to get signatures, and we'll turn copies around
Ready to go.
ASAP.
Thank you.
great, thank you. Okay, wow, here, this one's, we've seen some action on this next item. Status update on Main Street traffic project. Jack, you're the man tonight. This is your item.
Always the man.
That is
Peter,
true.
take it over.
That is,
I know how to turf it off.
Not a
John,
delegate.
that's part,
take note, John.
that's
Get ready.
part of what makes you the man, Jack. It's the ability to delegate.
So,
I'm not
You-
gonna
you-
pretend I know anything. I'm
he,
not going to pretend I know how much Peter.
Well, you've seen the people.
yeah, I've seen the surveyors out and about on Main Street over the
Yeah.
past few months. So, just to reorient everybody, we engaged Bayside Engineering to complete the base survey plan and the environmental permitting work, $60,000 in January. We've had a good weather winter, so they're a little bit ahead of schedule. They will expect to complete that work in May, and will present their report to the town. We're using Chapter 90 funds to fund this first phase of engineering. And so the next big hurdle is 25% design. If you'll remember, the town is responsible for funding the design work up to 25% design. Again, 25% design, a little bit of a misnomer. That's more like 50-75% design, but it's called 25% design with MassDOT. And so Bill Tyak and I went out. We met with the folks from Bayside a couple weeks ago now. Got an update on the project status in terms of what they've been working on, and also had them develop a scope of work to get us to that 25% number. They've given us, ballpark timeline, estimated costs, and so forth earlier on. But we wanted to have, a clear scope of work so we understood what they would be doing, what the timing would be, what the cost would be, and so forth. So they've provided that. Coming out of our meeting, they provided the first iteration. We went back and forth a couple times and added some language in. One of the important things I think that the board talked about that I wanted to be reflected in the contract is that we have input from the residents at this early design stage. They've added, there's a required public hearing once 25% design is completed. They've added what's a little bit of an artificial milestone of 15% design, and they're planning on doing a hearing at 15% design. So the whole point is they don't get too far along with the project. That then, we feel like we've kind of lost a little control over it, that we haven't listened to the residents, heard their concerns, questions, whatever feedback they've given us. And so they've added that language in, and the scope of work reflects that. The cost for this next phase is $180,000. And, we projected $250,000 total to get to 25% design, so they're just under that number. We will barely have enough Chapter 90 funds to cover $180,000, our annual allocation.
Right.
$150,000 just last month, and then we had a rollover prior year balance of about $48,000. So we're just under $200,000. So we'll have enough just to cover this, but basically do no other road work this whole year. So reached out to Representative Hill and Senator Tarr.
Good job.
Again, and told them, what we're trying to do. They're obviously well aware of the project. They came to the hearing that we had here in Town Hall back in late November, early December.
Yeah, that was very good that they came.
Yep, it's excellent.
It gave them insight, and I think it showed the townsfolk that this is serious, and we're taking it serious.
Yep, so they, at this point, are planning on, they have a request in the FY20 state budget for $200,000 of public safety grant funding that would hopefully be set aside for this project, so we wouldn't have to pay for this next phase of engineering. We won't know if it survives the budget process until really July 1. So hopefully they're certainly doing all that they can on their end to make sure that we're covered. Worst case scenario, we would use Chapter 90 funds. And the 15% design milestone will take about 3 to 4 months to get to once the contract is executed. So that puts you into, early, middle fall.
Yep.
So that will also give the town ample opportunity to have those small working groups with the various constituencies that we've identified, the Maples and the downtown businesses and Frankfort and so forth, so that we can get their input, and at that point we'll have the base survey plan, so it's not just the CTPS report, which was the Google map superimposed, just very high level kind of concepts. We'll have a much better sense of what the existing right-of-way is, what the proposed right-of-way would be.
And that's at what percent?
That's with the base survey plan. So we'll have that, you'll have that in May.
Because I'm a little bit curious when you commented about 15%.
Yep.
Having a background in construction engineering and design, 15% barely gets a few lines on a paper.
Not for horizontal engineering, not for road
Really?
work design. Yeah, 15%, you're actually going to have a fair amount of detail. More detail, I mean, you remember the report that CTPS provided to the town?
Yeah.
It's going to have much more detail than that.
Right, and that was pretty detailed.
And that was pretty
But this will be
detailed.
more, I don't want to say accurate,
It
but
will be more- it will.
accurate for our site.
Correct.
Well, I have seen a lot of activity with
Yep.
site engineers out here on the sidewalks and offsets.
Yeah, so this was obviously, one of the more important, more complex projects, higher priority projects that we've been talking about over the past couple of years. I wanted to make sure that the board was updated and that the project was just in a good place through the transition, obviously.
Okay.
John's aware of it and is eager to take it up.
It's on the list.
It's on the list.
Can't wait to
High
see
on the
that
list.
list. Yeah. That's good, because we don't want to obviously drop the ball, particularly with the citizens' input, which is the next thing that we probably would be involved in. So we do want to make sure this moves along.
Yeah. And also recognizing the transition was coming, Bill Tyack's certainly been involved in the process throughout, but he came to the meeting with me at Bayside, and he's, been looped in on all of this, so he's up to speed as well.
Okay. Questions or anything else for
Thank you, Peter,
For Peter.
for giving my report.
Happy to, Jack.
Thank you for seeing this through and also bringing us up to date, so it's fresh in our minds, at least now, as we transition. The next item under new business is the status of the impact, I love the titles, of the amended Hamilton Wenham Regional School District FY20 budget on town meeting warrant article and related ballot questions. So I have some background on this because I've been following it, but since things happen minute by minute here, I'm going to do the same thing and turf it over to Peter, because I bet something's happened today that I'm unaware of.
Nothing new today on this
Oh, okay.
particular front. But as was discussed last night when the question came up, obviously the number that will be on the ballot for the school operating override number 2 relative to, at the time, OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and the school resource officer has changed. And so the new number is $26,244 less in terms of what that override amount will be, because the school resource officer now, the funding, the $73,000 in funding for that has been removed from the district's FY20 budget. The school committee met last week. They approved an amended budget, and that budget has been recertified and sent to the 2 member municipalities. And so, the question came up last night, okay, well, where does that leave us? And ultimately, after talking to town council yesterday, in our town meeting prep meeting, how about that? Town meeting prep meeting.
The meeting before the meeting.
Right, the meeting before the meeting. Basically, if town meeting approves the Article 4 school operating override, now just relative to OPEB. We will obviously approve it at a lower number than we had initially planned. It'll only be $89,000. And if it's approved at town meeting and approved at the ballot, we will have authorization, a higher authorization than appropriation for this, for the FY20 budget. So we will technically have $26,000 and change of additional levy capacity that will be created by that vote at the ballot. But we don't have to spend that money for that purpose, because obviously that does not reflect the budget that was approved by the school committee. So the appropriated amount would be lower than the authorized amount.
They'll only assess us the lower amount as well.
They will only assess us the lower amount as well. Correct.
So no one's taxes will be raised by this difference.
Correct. We will only tax.
6,000?
Yep.
It won't be noticed of.
No, but I think it's, on principle, important to know that this is a change, but it's not going to affect people's taxes. We're not taxing them for something that we're not spending, just randomly taxing.
Yeah, and there were concerns about, whether that ballot question was still valid, because it had a different number and a different purpose. And ultimately, that's not an issue. So if both do pass, then the school budget, would be approved, and we wouldn't have to, the school committee wouldn't have to press the reset button and start their process again.
Pass as amended.
Correct.
Will you have amended warrant article sheets as handouts? Just a couple, like the first couple of pages? I'm thinking for people in the audience.
Sure.
At town meeting. Because it's sort of one number, but it, cascades down and changes the bottom line and
Yep.
Of a few things, so.
I've got a question. Have you received any sort of an apology as to why there was no school representation at the precursor to our town meeting last night?
No, I know that the finance committee chair and myself both reached out to the school committee members, chair and vice chair, and superintendent and assistant superintendent, and extended the invitation for them to attend the meeting.
I find that very, very disturbing.
Did they indicate previously they were going to attend the meeting?
No.
They just didn't respond, okay.
They, at least one of them indicated they didn't intend to attend, and I didn't hear from anybody else.
It was unfortunate, because it left our FinCom in a position of trying to explain and answer questions about a budget that wasn't theirs. And it left people, questions unanswered, because there was no one there to answer them. I presume that we are going to have someone at town meeting?
I did email the superintendent this morning and asked that question. I haven't heard back yet. I would assume that he will be there on Saturday.
Someone will be.
But we assume they would be there last night as well, so I think that prior to our prep meeting Saturday morning, it'd be a good idea to know whether definitively who's going to come.
Absolutely.
And if no one's going to come, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with that, right?
I don't think there'll be much to deal with if no one's going to come.
Well, it's on the
just
ballot.
going to be, well, yeah.
We're going to go through it one way or the other.
Yeah, but-
The question is, who's going to explain it?
Right, and
It's not up, it's not our
that's
budget.
right. I think that's the point. If they don't come, there's not going to be anyone to explain it. So
We're still going to vote on it.
we're still going to vote on it,
Right.
but we're going to vote on it with whatever information people can glean from what's in their books
Yeah. And we may comment on it.
and any
whatever.
comments that we have. Yeah,
Be a little
I was-
awkward.
I was
It'd be very
disappointed,
awkward, actually, but-
especially since we have several school committee members that live in Wenham, including the chair of the school committee.
Well, frankly, I don't think it's a school committee member responsibility at all. This is the superintendent's budget.
No, it isn't, John. It's the school committee's budget.
It's the school committee's budget. The school
At this
committee
point.
has to approve the budget.
So the superintendent,
Approve it, But it's the superintendent's budget.
It's
is how
technically called the
I've always
school
understood
committee's
it.
budget, and I can tell you that from firsthand experience. When it is proposed early on, it is proposed as the superintendent's budget. After it goes through all of its iterations, or no iterations, all the explanations, all the deliberation by the school committee, and the school committee votes it, at that point, it becomes the school committee's budget.
So process-wise, much like here, where the preliminary budget is presented, I present the preliminary budget.
Yeah.
Goes, then the selectmen have a chance to review it and amend it, and FinCom, same. That's the same process that they have. So it starts off as a superintendent's budget.
Okay, and then you're
And then it
saying
goes-
there's a baton handoff at a vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
Particular
The
vote?
first meeting in January, the school committee then tentatively adopts it, and then they go through their process. It's all outlined in the regional
I
agreement.
think it actually may or may not be called the school committee budget. Yeah, FY20 school committee budget is actually what the document. And this one is a revised one, which they are legally allowed to do at any time, vote less to decrease the budget. But it was.
Last point, at the warrant hearings in the past, excuse me, and at the town meeting, historically, school administration presents to the town meeting in the town warrant hearing, presents the budget, answers questions, so forth, not the school committee members.
Well, again,
That's historically, that's what happened.
Yeah,
my
I've never
history.
not seen this kind of.
My history was, as a school committee chair, I attended the warrant hearing, and I attended the town meeting, at least in Wenham. It may have been at that time because.
You didn't present, though.
I did. As a matter of fact, I recall one town meeting that had an override where I stood at the front of the room and looked at the faces of the people looking back at me and said, I have a 5-minute presentation of this information. Is it the will of this town meeting to hear this presentation? And I got a resounding no. So I did not make a presentation that year, but it was, as the school committee, although the superintendent is the spokesperson for the educational leader, it's perfectly within the school committee's right to make the presentation on
Yes,
town meeting.
They're right, but historically,
Well,
Mike Harvey and somebody else had made the presentation.
Maybe since Mike Harvey, or maybe since, when I was there,
His predecessor also did it.
when I was on the school committee, it was depended, but it was mostly a school
I was on
committee
FinCom for
member.
10 years.
And I'm-
Every year.
Well, we don't have to fight over the history. Clearly, it can be either. Someone better, really, really better be there. And I think probably the superintendent has the most in-depth knowledge.
Correct, because that's who put it together.
But
I mean,
it's
that's one
the school committee's job to understand it to the level that they can present it to the people. Because they're the elected officials who report to the people. So if they don't have that information, certainly they ought to have someone there who feels comfortable.
Well, somebody better come.
Which is generally, right, like, so in Wenham, the finance committee presents the budget.
Right.
And other
Right, because
places,
it is the finance committee's budget, not.
there are other places where the finance director, the town administrator presents the budget.
We've had that here
Right.
within the last 10 years. We're the finance director.
But generally, the superintendent has presented at town meeting. I don't know that there's been a presentation at the warrant hearings, certainly not in the past couple of years.
My recollection in the past, excuse me, is that the school administration attends a warrant hearing.
Yes.
And is available to answer questions, but doesn't make a presentation.
Yeah, that is usually true. But to the extent that there are always questions, it's
Yeah, who's going to answer
useful-
the question?
it's
That was the
useful to
point of
have-
my
yeah,
comment, and last
yeah.
night, the same thing.
Well,
Yeah,
anyway.
it was
we'll see.
unfortunate. It was unfortunate. And it is unfortunate because it's a little bit of a pattern of a lack of sort of participation. But they have the final chance at town meeting on
We're
Saturday.
the people that have to pay the bills, I mean.
Well, it's
Somebody's
just
got
a-
to be responsible here.
It's an issue of transparency. I don't have any. I think that the school committee and the school district is doing what they think is the right thing to do financially, but I wouldn't know what that is. I don't have any justification for any of it.
That's right.
Because we're not given that information. So it's
That
the
was
people of.
enlightening for 15 minutes, and we got another
Right.
one. Okay, next.
Okay. Other matters as may not have been reasonably anticipated. Just something that occurred to me that people might be interested to know. So we did have a pre-meeting meeting yesterday, a prep meeting for the
Pre-meeting or pre-meeting?
Actually, this is a pre-meeting. Anyway, we met yesterday with the town council and town clerk and the moderator and a FinCom chair and the finance director, Peter and myself, just to really review the playbook. And I won't go through the whole thing, but a few things that I think people will be encouraged to know. Big concerns last year about, especially the beginning of the meeting, how long it was. A lot of steps have been taken to start on time, shorten the preliminary information, many steps. So that preamble, I think, seems like it will be much shorter. I was interested to hear also that the check-in process will be shorter, will be automated. So there are, I've forgotten what she calls them, automated poll pads. So when there'll be three stations, so people can come in to any of the three. You no longer have to line up by street or name. Go to any one of the three.
To your name or something?
And, yeah. Might be address, I think it's name, and there'll be a person standing there to give you a voting card. But I think that process of having 3 stations that are all interchangeable will speed the process up a lot. And I believe Diane said she's going to start registering or signing people in
Noontime.
At noon.
Yep.
So that's a little earlier. So there've been a lot of steps taken to streamline the process.
Nice.
So we have a shorter warrant as well. We worked hard to make it shorter, but in addition, the sort of other processes.
As Jack would say, truncated?
I don't, actually,
we're
I don't
missing
think
anything.
truncated. I just think I'm going to say more efficient.
Yeah.
Truncated, John.
So anyway, I just wanted to reassure people that list of items that we said, that were identified very early on at a debrief last April, have all been either addressed to say we're not going to do it or addressed positively. So we'll see the effects of it.
Was it last May or June, going over what worked and what didn't work, and I thought that was a very helpful process. I think Peter and Trudy got together and put together a grid that,
Yep.
so many of the improvements you're discussing were already discussed.
Yes, but they were implemented, I guess.
Yesterday's meeting was to, okay, this is what we said we were going to do. Are we actually doing it?
Good. Yeah.
So we just wanted to close that loop and make sure that we were following up on everything that we said that we thought would be helpful to making minor changes to.
Are we going to, if Brad and Bruce don't show up on time, do we just start the meeting and then interrupt it when they show up? I mean,
I think that's what
Yep.
we said. The meeting will start at 1, and
The
Brad
meeting
and
will start
Bruce
at 1
will be
regardless of whether we have
notified
quorum.
that.
Yep.
And they've, been told that, I'm sure they'll be informed that that's what's going to happen, and we're going to proceed. And yeah, certainly if they come in at a reasonable time, we'll interrupt whatever is happening and give them a moment or two to
We want
speak.
those grants, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you don't really, there's a balance between, of course, wanting to keep the meeting going and sort of thumbing your nose at the state senator and state rep. We welcome them.
We'll just have to stop.
And I think they understand.
People, they mean well.
They understand our situation. And typically, as long as Brad comes on time, by the time he's done, Bruce will arrive and it'll work. Last year, a lot of things sort of happened, but.
And Bruce talks fast, so.
And Bruce talks fast. So I think, anyway, I was encouraged to listen, which is mostly what happened, at all of the things that had been done. Thanks to all these folks. Okay. On the agenda, we're on to old business. The next item is the potential approval of the North Shore Regional Emergency Communication Center, IMA, with the state 911. And John has that item.
I do. My concern is that Peter is the one who has been on top of this thoroughly.
There we go. Is that
I'm familiar?
Why it's on the agenda, right?
Yeah, I've been familiar with it. I stay in touch. I've talked to both chiefs and Peter as well, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us, the town of Wenham, to continue to be a part of, and due to the enormous amount of pressure that Peter and his counterparts in other towns have put on the state, it sounds like we've got the best of both worlds, a significant cost savings and a seat at the table so that we don't become lost in a medley of state bureaucracy.
Peter made an extensive presentation, either the last meeting, the meeting before that, and the meeting before that, and we asked questions, and I think it was a great job that Peter and his colleagues did, and so that, I think we're ready to vote on this, right?
Yeah, so the only thing that I would add that's new from last week is that at this point, there are 5 other municipalities that are currently part of the REC, and all have indicated that they plan to now, at this point, stay in once State 911 takes over on July 1. And as of the end of last week, Middleton, Topsfield, and Essex, their boards of selectmen have all approved and signed off on the new IMA. Amesbury is still outstanding, different form of government. It's with somewhere in the process with their city council, who has to approve it in addition to the mayor. But Amesbury, who had prior to indicated that they were going to be leaving, looks like they're going to be staying now. Just wanted to let the board know that the other towns that have been involved plan to continue on.
Great.
Great. So we have, John, I think, has the fairly long motion in this one.
Yes.
Sounds on to the next agenda item already, Nancy.
Okay, that's not it?
There you go.
Well, what's
There's
this?
the motion. That's just the cover.
It looks like the wording.
Motion is long.
Okay. I move to the board to approve the proposed intermunicipal agreement for the joint provisions of public safety, communications, dispatch, and operations services between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts State 911 Department and member towns for a period beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending July 1st, 2029, to authorize Catherine Harrison, Board of Selectmen Chair, to execute the agreement on the board's behalf and to request a status update from the police chief, fire chief, and town administrator on or before December 31st in 2019 regarding their 6-month assessment of the North Shore RECC. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, John.
Is there any further question or discussion?
No, I'm just very happy that we're at this point.
Me too. Good job, Peter.
You can check that one off. But we haven't voted yet, so maybe wait 1 second.
Hold on.
It's also a good job to many people who preceded even Peter, who put this on the map for us to carry on with. This has been a long process, a lot of years, and a lot of effort,
And I do also want to acknowledge the chiefs who've been really involved in this process every step of the way. They attend at least monthly meetings, sometimes 2 or 3, 4 times a month, to move forward, put
I
the
understand there's
program in a
another
good place.
one tomorrow?
There's a police chiefs meeting, I believe, on Friday.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that
That's right.
they've done operationally to put the program, in a better position moving forward. So just want to acknowledge their work.
And also, too, our 2 sheriffs, first Cousins and now Coppinger, who have been there supporting us in many ways, and particularly financially, to help keep this on track so that we, the town of Wenham, had a very low cost of being a member there.
We know how much it would cost to go elsewhere now,
Right.
either Danvers or Hamilton.
Right.
So
right.
We know what savings we're recouping
Right.
from this arrangement.
So thank you again, Peter. All right, any further questions?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. And you will convey that once we sign something, I'm
Yes,
sure.
indeed.
Too. Okay, so I have a trivia question before we get to the next item. So, as
Oh,
I...
it's getting late, Catherine.
Well, it's a very quick one. When I like to read the agendas to myself before the meetings so I can make sure that I can pronounce everything that's on the agenda. And I got stuck on the word Victualler, which I had been pronouncing, which is our next item that has to do with the bagel shop, that I had pronouncing victular. And so that everyone knows, that is not the way you pronounce that, according to at least 2 dozen.
You've been wrong all these years?
This agenda item is the potential approval of a common vittler's license for the bagel shop, Hamilton Wenham, silent C. So anyway, that's the agenda item, and John has it.
Okay.
And we did hear
For the
from,
bagel man,
So the
John,
C
go
is,
ahead.
you're saying the C is silent?
apparently, according to
Yeah.
Mr. Google,
All right.
it was a fun family dinner, little exercise. It's kind of what we do.
Okay. I move
Oh, you should admit that.
to
It's
approve
true.
a common vitular
See? Now I made it more
I'm gonna think
colorful.
about that every time now.
license for the bagel shop, Hamilton/Wenham, for a period beginning April 2nd, 2019 through December 31st, 2019, contingent on receipt of all necessary town permits and approvals.
I'll second that, John.
Thank you, sir.
My only comment is that we had the 2 partners in last week. They seemed very engaged, excited, interested, cooperative. So I feel like,
And they apparently
It's
have
just-
some success in Beverly
yeah,
Farms, so
yeah. So this, it seems as
this
if
is not
they're,
a,
they're
first
moving along.
step at it. So,
Yep. That's all.
all right.
Well, They can
Yes.
actually make bagel sandwiches for lunch too, or is it just bagels? or-
Yeah, no, bagel
Sandwiches.
sandwiches.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, remember they
Boar's
said they
head,
had,
meat.
That's right, they had all
I
kinds
didn't
of
know that was
meats.
just something you put on a bagel with cream cheese or something like that for
No.
breakfast, so good. I'm
No,
glad.
they're open, it sounded like they were open from 6:30 in the morning
To
through
3.
lunch, right.
Till 3 in the afternoon.
Right, so
I
they,
recall.
and they talked specifically about the type of lunch meat that they would have and the number of different kinds of sandwiches that they would have, so
I listened to it, I didn't, okay,
it's,
good. good.
you know, that's my,
We have
that
the
was my
meats.
New York ear listening to that.
I didn't know there was meats in the morning, you know, that.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to make sandwiches. I think the intention, or at least the menu.
In the morning.
The menu calls for, has sandwiches on it, bagel sandwiches.
You seen the menu?
Uh-huh,
Where'd you see that?
Jackie Bresnahan. She's not here anymore.
That girl knows
And
everything.
I think she
She's got her
actually
fingers in
had a Wenham menu. Don't ask me where she got that.
They have
but-
to provide
to
it as
have
part of
it.
their application to the Board of Health,
okay,
to the
there you
health
go.
agent.
So that's why she had
I
it.
can't wait.
Yep, so,
All right.
all
Any
I had.
further question or comment?
No.
Then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. so that's unanimous.
That approves.
Okay,
When's the grand opening, do we know?
they said they were hoping for the end of,
They're
middle to end
hoping
of April?
they're hoping for actually beginning of next week.
Yeah, April.
I thought they had
first,
some
second week of April.
delays, but you'd know that better than I would.
Yeah, so they're still working on their permits. They don't have all those in hand yet. So I think it's basically as soon as they
Yeah.
get that done, they're going to be ready to go. They talked about a soft opening, maybe beginning of next week, and then
Right.
going from there. So
Yeah, soon. It's going to be soon.
I'll be there.
Yeah. They also talked about
Be the first bagel man.
some kind of a promotion, an opening day promotion. So we should keep our eyes open for
I
that.
will.
There could be a free bagel in
Eyes
our
open,
future. The public's
Your nostrils.
future. Okay, next item, J, a small amendment to this item. We will review the First Church Community Preservation Act grant agreement. Based on information and actions in the last week, we don't have one ready to approve yet, but we do have a draft that we can review. Peter can review. Is this my item? I'm talking about it. No, it's Jack's item. So sorry. Take it away, Jack.
Oh, good, continue.
It's not water.
All
It's
I
not
was going
water
to do
this
was
time.
hand it to Peter.
No,
Sorry,
I would do that myself, but go ahead, no,
No,
please.
no, that's all-
I insist.
Okay, Peter.
okay.
My mother would approve.
So we talked
Sorry,
about
Jack.
this at the meeting last week. This is, again, something that we've been trying to finalize, close the loop on, and are making progress, but aren't quite there at this point. Following up on our conversation, Bill Weiss was here from the First Church at the last meeting. We sent over the latest draft of the grant agreement. We did actually hear back from their council with a number of red lines, which we hadn't gotten the first iteration through. Some of them, many of them I think are fine and won't be an issue. There are a couple that have been proposed specifically relative to pretty dramatic changes they've made to the liability provisions and indemnification provisions that are standard not just in the CPA grant agreements, but are standard in many of the town's contracts in general. And so those are being reviewed by legal counsel now. And in the meantime, some of the documentation provisions that they've suggested being stricken or amended by providing copies of invoices and so forth for work that's already been done. We're working on those. I'm actually meeting on Thursday with Bill to go over some of those issues. So going in the right direction, not quite there yet, but hopefully will be wrapped up soon.
Good.
So I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. You want me to just send those over to you and you can include them in your conversation, or do you want to, how do you want to handle that? It's mostly what you have, but I
Okay.
just had a couple of questions on some of the new language.
Okay, yeah, if you want to just send me an
Send
email,
it. Sure.
that'd be helpful.
I'll send you a red line to the blue line.
Okay.
Just a few things. Okay, item K is actually my agenda item, although you may have it if you'd like, Jack, if you want to swap. But it is the status update on the selection of consulting firms for the town administrator recruitment. So,
Yeah, he already.
want me to continue?
No.
Okay. So, as we have already discussed, an RFQ went out. Forgive me, I don't remember the dates. Well, I probably have it right here. And we got responses to our RFQ for an executive search consultant for the town of Wenham's next town administrator. There were 3 responses to that request for qualifications. We invited all 3 of those firms in last week. We interviewed them in public session. It was Community Paradigm Associates, the UMass Boston Collins Center, and Municipal Resources, Inc. So we had an opportunity to spend. Jack and I were there. John was unable to attend, but we had an opportunity to have a good discussion and very good presentations. Jack can tell me if you agree with this, but I thought very good presentations by all 3 firms.
I agree.
And we're able to answer questions, whatever. At that meeting, we, after the interviews, Jack and I did deliberate and actually voted, if I'm getting this right, to move forward with Municipal Resources, Inc. for this executive recruitment service. So that's by way of update. Since that happened, we have, I've checked with, spent some time talking with our finance director to understand how we would pay for these services, and we've identified the fact that we would need an RFT, which is already scheduled with the Finance Committee for Saturday, and a couple thousand additional dollars, which have been identified as being in the town hall expense. So the motion for tonight is really, we've already made a motion to approve this contract, but this motion tonight is to just confirm the availability of funds. So I will make this sort of, I don't know if this is really, we have already approved the contract with Municipal Resources. So is this a motion to execute the contract subject to the confirmation of ability of funds? Because we already have approved the contract. So this says, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the execution of a contract with Municipal Resources, Inc. for executive recruitment services for the town administrator position in an amount not to exceed $14,800, subject to the confirmation of the availability of funds.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Jack and I.
I think, Kathy, I think all 3 made a great presentation. I was struck by the similarities in their approaches. And the first person said, we all do the same thing, and that same processes, and that each one had a couple of different towns or cities they were working on, and it really came down to the people. They go out and gather a bunch of people. They all, this pool of people, as Peter knows well, they know the pool, and that I'm sure whatever firm we chose, the applicants would be more or less the same, if not identical. And the process that they suggested we follow, which was very, very similar to what we followed with Peter's hiring, all three had the same, so the recipe is the same for all three. It's just a question of which one do you think would probably do a better job. Each had a little different nuances and strength, and I said we couldn't probably go wrong with the Collins group was weaker than the other two, but in terms of, anyway, a little bit weaker, but the person making the presentation was excellent. So it was, I won't say it was a toss-up, but we knew MRI from before. Alan Gould came, and he also, based on a question I asked him, he would be the primary contact here, which would be, if he said no to that, I would have, I don't know what I would have voted, but I wouldn't have been happy.
Well, we're familiar with his work and
Yeah.
comfortable with it. He now has some help, so there will be other people.
And he knows the town, and that
He definitely has a leg
this
up.
is not rocket science. The other firms could rapidly figure out who the town of Wenham is and what they, so on and so forth. So anyway, there's only 3 firms really out there. So the Collins Center has far fewer engagements than the other 2 firms do.
Particularly with town administrators.
Although they did a much better job this time than they did the last time.
They did. And there was a different person who came and did the presentation this time, and she did do a very good job. But to Jack's point, MRI continues to be impressive. We know them. They've some of the work, so to speak, has been partially done. They are in sync with the way we think about how much involvement and how little involvement, and they have a beginning to end kind of thing, a very comprehensive program, which was impressive to me because that's what we'll need, I think. So that's the...
All 2 of the firms, we asked them the size of the Citizen Advisory Committee. They gave it pros and cons of this, how many candidates you should end up with. You don't want to end up with 2 if one drops out and you're down to 1. Excuse me, so all of them actually gave us more or less the same advice. So we want to limit the Citizens Committee, ideally between 5 and 7, which was the advice we received. Much larger, it gets unwieldy, and that much smaller, somebody else might drop out. So you want representation, but you don't want a dozen people either. So I thought it made sense, but it was striking how common the advice was amongst the firms. Yeah. And nobody said, no, you should have 15, better off 15.
Yeah, nobody said more rather than less, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
May I say something?
Certainly.
First
Sorry
of all,
you
I'd like to
there.
apologize for not being here as I had hoped to be, but my work has been bearish for the last few weeks, and I even had to give up my date with my granddaughter
That's sad.
because it was so bad. So I wasn't here. I have a bit of a different thought, and the thought difference is that we never used outside firms until Peter. It was always done in-house. We had some good successes. We had some miserable failures, in my opinion, having experienced both ends of that. And my feeling is that because of 3 reasons. One, we're spending a lot of money to do this with some outside firm. Jack, you just elaborated my thoughts precisely that this is cookie cutter now. You got 3 companies that know the same players on both ends of this spectrum, the candidates and the need, the operations that need, like ourselves. We come in at a very small rate. We're a small town. We're competing against much larger towns. I personally think that we will end up far down on the list of priorities for any one of these 3 companies, though I have read both through their material, and I think the community paradigm probably would be my vote if I still had a vote. Secondly, the money, and then secondly, we've just hired an interim town administrator who knows this arena incredibly well, as far as I understand. I, at the very least, would like to see him play an integral role in this whole process and not a subordinate role, because I think this man has incredible experience behind him, and I think we should hear what he has to say.
What's his name again, John? I forgot.
Yeah, let's see, which John is it going to be? John 1, John 2, John 3. So I just wanted to make sure that you folks knew that I think we would be amiss in not availing ourselves of his expertise and skills that he has spent many years honing and developing. And this is what he teaches for part of his livelihood. Thank you.
You said you had 3 points, John. That was two.
No, I think she said-
well,
he
the other
said
one
three,
really
I
wasn't
think,
that
actually.
important, but thank you.
So just a couple of comments to your comments. Thank you. I think that the probably most important reason, aside from resources, to hire an outside firm for this kind of a position is their ability to recruit. So these companies, as opposed to just ourselves, have a stable, a network of people that they will bring to the table way beyond possibly people who will apply. So I think that's the reason why not just Wenham, but towns in general, as this becomes more competitive and there are fewer and fewer applicants, this is how towns attract or get names into the pool. I don't think I agree with the low on the priority on any of these. I know in MRIs, the statement was made, they are ready to start the minute we sign a contract. So it wasn't my impression that we were low on the priority list last time.
Well, they're not going to tell you that. They're selling
Well, no,
a
but I mean,
product, a service.
we lived it. I think that's one of the things, we lived it. And as I recall, MRI was pushing us time-wise. We weren't saying, come on, guys, get going. They were saying, we've got to do this faster. And all three actually said this. We need to condense the time of this. So anyway, those are just my comments.
Okay.
So, thank you for your comments. If you have no
Yep.
further, this again.
I do also value this very highly, because it is the top position that we're responsible for, to make sure, as been used so many times, to keep the trains running. And Peter knows how important that is and how involved it is and how much effort and time it takes. And Mr. Petrin, I'm sure, knows every bit that same thing.
Right, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to say about Mr. Petrin. No commentary on his abilities, but I think we, the town of Wenham, in the 25 hours a week that Mr. Petrin is going to be here, we are going to need him the whole time he's here to do Wenham work. And I'm not sure that there's time in that short period to do this as well. That doesn't mean that I think that we wouldn't use his expertise. I mean, part of this process, part of any of these processes, is for the recruitment firm to gather information from town employees as to what they think would be right, or, so I would hope and expect that there would be some interaction, especially at the very beginning, in gathering any kind of knowledge that that our interim town administrator would have. And then I think it will be necessary for him to do the town's other work. But I didn't want to forget that point. I'm not denigrating in any way Mr. Petrin's expertise. It certainly is there. It's just
I do have a
big
comment.
job.
So I remember when we decided we had previously outsourced the financial functions of this town.
Mm-hmm.
We had outside people running the finance department.
Oh, God.
Not successfully.
That's
but, so when I was elected to the board, I convinced one of my colleagues, at least at the time, that we should have this person hire our own person to take over. They allowed me to, unenthusiastically, they allowed me to go off and see if I can find somebody. So we didn't hire a recruiting firm, and we had received 30 resumes. I went through all 30 resumes, and there was only one person who was remotely qualified for the job, Angel Wills, and we actually ended up hiring that person. The other 29, and I interviewed about a dozen people, I could tell within 30 seconds that they weren't qualified for the job. And even if there were half a dozen people who were qualified, I don't have the time or the background, the capability of doing background checks on these people.
Right.
So one of the most important things is the background check. And so I don't know if it was somebody who had 3 DUIs and, that was convicted of robbery 4 years ago, or embezzling funds from the town. I wouldn't know that. So that, MRI, all 3 firms probably have the same, but certainly MRI does, because it's headed up by a former police chief. So basically having a thorough background check, not being embarrassed down the line after you hire somebody. Did you know, by the way, this person, et cetera, et cetera. And then organizing the screening committee and so on and so forth, I think is a very valuable adjunct to this process. And that I did receive a comment that they're going to winnow it down to, I guess in the end, 6 or something like that. We can also look at, the question came up with this person I spoke with, well, what about some of the people that didn't make their cut? Well, on the other hand, we could look at all the people that didn't make the cut and look at the resumes and select 1 or 2, if we so wish, to put into the final pool of people. We don't have to necessarily totally rely upon them. We can see the resumes ourselves and ask, in this case, MRI, gee, why did this person not make the cut or that person not make the cut? So we wouldn't be totally dependent upon the screening process of the outside firm. And we could choose to do that or not. I'm just saying that I thought that was a interesting idea. So with the background checks and these people have a pool of people. Peter used to be in one of the pools, I guess, and that that they know would be fit for this town, and that who are anxious to move from their present position, and that instead of just waiting for a resume to float in on a website,
right,
there would be an outreach to these people. Hey, here's a job come up. I think they'll fit you. This will fit your career path well. Da 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 da. What do you think about this? I know the people. Great selectmen.
Yeah.
Jack, might I comment
Make sure
on your
that-
concerns regarding background checks?
Yeah,
Don't we have a police chief?
yeah, we do.
Okay, wouldn't that be a responsibility that he has done numerous times for us?
I can,
I don't know.
I'm
I will
aware
give
of
you
it.
a hypothetical situation. I have been involved in 2 searches in different capacities, and in one search, MRI did the background check, and in the other search, a police chief did the background check, and there were, knowingly, I mean, these were choices that the communities made, but significant differences in the amount of information that the police chief could obtain himself. And also, the background check that's done by MRI includes information other than criminal information, so financial and credit and things that a police chief wouldn't do.
Our police chief can look up all of, he has obviously access, Tom does, to the criminal justice system's records. But there's lots more than just that's a background. Were the allegations of impropriety that didn't result in some criminal complaint? Were there other improprieties in the job? What did the people in the town think of this person? And that those are all background items that aren't necessarily criminal background, and so that
Right.
we need to know that.
That's correct. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
And
And
if you,
I mean, we could, because that's where you're going to make a mistake if you don't really.
Yep.
Do you know this person did this? And
Well, it may not be criminal, but there could be, as you said, financial. And I've
Right.
very,
other
very well
allegations,
experienced with that
sexual
because
improprieties, but it's something that didn't rise to the level of an arrest or criminal indictment, or I'm sure that the person maybe, although he or she might have resigned from their present position, maybe he were forced to resign. You're not going to find that. The police chief is not going to find that out.
right.
But these other firms are going to find out. They probably already know. I'm sure they got a dossier on almost everybody that would fit someplace.
Yeah. And I won't embarrass Peter by revealing anything, but if you recall, we received this kind of a background check on Peter, and I remember thinking, I have now a lot more information on this gentleman than I really even need, but good to know. All great, all clean, all perfect, and it's panned out to be, but I remember thinking this was a very thorough
Where
background
would we
check.
get a golf handicap?
I know, right?
Oh, no.
So, anyway,
All right.
we've
Well, I can't win the money from you on the course check.
Yeah, right. So anyway,
enough
so
said.
we have a motion, again, this is to execute this contract, for me to execute this contract, subject to the confirmation of the availability of funds. I think the motion's been made and seconded. Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. So that's unanimous. And I guess I will contact all three firms
Okay.
to let them know. Or maybe one will know sooner than the others, but tomorrow I'll reach out to all three firms. And I believe that we'll, after town meeting, once we have all this stuff sort of settled away, I think that we'll be beginning. Stuff will start quickly. Okay. We have one last item, is that right? Yep. And it is, has to do with the Maplewood Senior Affordable Housing Project update. And it is actually an update. We were all at the warrant hearing last night. There was a fair amount of discussion about this project, good discussion, questions, a bit of confusion, a lot of questions. I think our FinCom had a fair number of questions. And we talked a bit, and tonight in our executive session, we talked a bit about the lack of the settlement documents. So as we know, we have seen a term sheet which lays out what the plaintiffs and the developer in an outline form are willing to compromise to. But we also know that there is going to be a more detailed, more thorough, more informative settlement document that also will need to be approved by the plaintiffs and the and Harbor Light. And until that happens, we actually can't come to complete resolution of the litigation. So we're kind of disappointed that here we are a few days before town meeting and there is still no settlement documents. We understand that, we assume folks are working hard to get to that, but they haven't gotten to it yet. And we're a little bit concerned that, based on some of the comments and some things that we've heard, that this document may appear, but it may appear on Saturday morning, which puts us in a very difficult situation to have council look at it, for us to understand it. So I'm going to make a motion with that preliminary information, and we can further discuss the motion. So I move that unless a fully executed settlement agreement, I guess I should be specific, regarding the Maple Woods project between the plaintiffs and Harbor Light, unless a fully executed settlement agreement is not in the town administrator's office by noon on this Friday, April 15th, giving us enough time to take a look at it, that we, the Board of Selectmen, will, as our right, make a motion on town meeting floor to pass over Article 12, Motion 8, I think, is the CPC motion. And of course, that will have to be voted on by town meeting, but that would be our motion and our recommendation to town meeting, absent a settlement agreement.
Let me suggest something also.
Well,
would it not be better to have that directive come from the person who has petitioned for this CPC funding?
it's.
Andrew DeFranza or his Harbor Light?
Well, so, truthfully, in an ideal world, if Andrew DeFranza if it came to be Friday, Thursday, tomorrow, or whatever, and he did not see a settlement agreement and he didn't feel that one was forthcoming, nor did the plaintiffs, because remember there are two sides to this settlement agreement, I think one option would certainly be for Mr. DeFranza to withdraw his application and therefore
Or
would.
request a passover or something. I think my feeling is that it would play better for all involved if he stays in control as opposed to this board taking control from him.
Well,
Well, let me,
Go ahead,
on the way
Jack.
out of the meeting last night, I followed him outside, and that he thought they were close, but he's told me that before. But he also said if we don't have any, if he told me that if there isn't an agreement by the town meeting, he's going to quote unquote pull it. Exactly what that
did he
means.
say that?
He said that.
Okay.
I don't know. He didn't describe pulling it, but I presume that's just a minute, Harry, and that. Okay, and so. I mean, we've been working on it, and I know that the agreement, the 8 conditions we have in there, one of them at least anyway, or maybe 2, sort of protect the town. With the contingency, there isn't an agreement, well, it doesn't go forward, he doesn't get the money, I got all that. But nevertheless, as one selectman, I don't want to be there at town meeting and have somebody in the audience say, excuse me, that we've read for years that there's been a dispute and it's in court. Has that been resolved? And I don't want to be the selectman that has to get up there and say, I'm sorry, no, it isn't. And that it's still ongoing. However, we're protected because we have this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel right to me that I don't think that's going to engender a lot of enthusiasm amongst the participants in a town meeting to basically go ahead and adopt this carefully crafted motion, and that, he said it was really close, but he said it was really close a month ago. So if it's really close, they should get it done. And I don't want to actually show up at, what do we need, 11 o'clock Saturday morning?
11:30.
11. I don't want to show up at 11:30 Saturday morning and say, did you have it, or it's coming? And that so there's a courier on their way, or something else like that. And that, as Catherine said a minute ago, we also want to be able to review it and look at it.
Right.
And that,
So the timing frame, I agree with you, Catherine, that
Anyway.
it can't happen, as Jack is saying, at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. But at the same time, I just have this gut instinct that it all would play better for everybody's sake if Andrew stepped up to the plate and said, well, it does not look like we're going to make it, say, on a Friday afternoon.
well, okay.
So
to
this
us,
is,
so that we don't have that last-minute panic to figure out, okay, now we've got it, what do we do with it? We don't have time.
so I think this motion actually allows both of those things, or either of those things to happen. I fully expect that we would make both the plaintiffs and Mr. DeFranza aware of this motion, should it pass. And so both sides, groups, will be on notice that if there is not something, this is what's going to happen. And that gives Mr. DeFranza the opportunity between, Tuesday night and Friday at noon, to do as you just said,
Yeah.
to make it known to us through Peter that
Him and his Harbor Light group, and then
And the
also
plaintiffs.
the other side
Yep.
as well,
Yep.
that, we need clarity to this, and by a reasonable time, and not at your will or your last-minute whims.
Right. And if he, it will be in his control ultimately if he, as he's intimated, is not confident that there is going to be an
Right.
agreement in time. It's his prerogative to come to us and, ask us to take some action on his behalf.
I just add one more thing. Obviously, the board's prerogative to make the motion. Ultimately, it'll be up to town meeting to whether to pass
Right.
over the article. So
Right.
you're just indicating that would be what the action that the board would plan to
Yep.
take if
Yep.
there wasn't a settlement agreement. Doesn't necessarily mean that the article will be passed over.
Nope, it's at the will. I'm
Would you
sorry.
have-
Yes,
Would you come up to the microphone?
yes, please.
I find it astounding that you haven't talked to the CPC on this. You're putting this commission in a very bad light by neglecting our input on this. I've had ongoing conversations with Andrew. Got an email from him 5 minutes ago. He is very hopeful that he will have an agreement tomorrow morning. That being said,
Great.
I've also said to him that I would hope he would not pull this unless it is a permanent pulling of the application. I don't think the CPC will take kindly to this coming a third time. Remember, it did come before CPC before. I think we need to look forward to the good of the town and let this play out. If his board decides to pull it, so be it. As John says, it's coming from them. I think it's almost unkind, unprofessional for us, for the town, for the selectmen to send such a letter and to think that you have the right. I think Peter's got a point. It's in the warrant. You're going to pass over. You're going to. I think you mentioned that particular motion, 12A, 12.8. I think that is going to be more disruptive than, Jack, if you said somebody says to you, do you have a binding agreement? Do you not want affordable housing? I see no real downside. If they don't get all their ducks in a row, they don't get their money. And we would know that pretty early on.
I understand that, but the townspeople are looking for us to advise them, and we've already voted on this in the warrant book. But I voted on that, and I've been assured for weeks now that they'll have an agreement before town meeting, because I've repeatedly asked Andrew in a telephone conversation and a coffee I had with him. He assured me that I should feel confident that he'll have it. So based on that assurances from him, that's why I went forward. But now all of a sudden we're 4 days or whatever it is away from town meeting. We still don't have it, and that. He was close before, he's still close. It's really good to hear that he'll have it tomorrow. So this whole conversation now is going to be academic if the information he transmitted to you is accurate. So tomorrow we'll have the letter.
We'll see. But, Jack, you can vote against it at town meeting, but I think that this is usurping the CPC to send this kind of an ultimatum to him. I think it's totally inappropriate. I've never heard of such a thing being done.
There are a lot of things about this process, Harriet, that have been unique. And we have accused each other and each other's boards of being inappropriate. And I think in reality, each board with its own authority is trying to do the right thing for the townspeople. I actually think that I wouldn't agree with you, but it would be up to the CPC, actually up to Mr. DeFranza, that this be a permanent pull. I think the issue here is that there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions that we won't be able to answer. I fully think that if 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, whatever, I think there will be a settlement agreement. I think both parties want that. And when things are put together and we have that in hand and more questions are answered, I think I would, if I were on the CPC, I would entertain it again, especially if I had a whole lot more information. And I think it would be more likely to be successful at town meeting, as we've seen many times in the past. People start saying, well, wait, do you have this? Oh, you don't have that? Well, what about this? And the more questions that are asked and unanswered, the more uneasy the town meeting assembly gets. So again, it's up to the CPC whether they would accept another application, but I don't see this as, personally, an end-all, go away. This town meeting has turned into a bit of an arbitrary deadline for the settlement. If we didn't have this application and this town meeting, that settlement may be done in 2 weeks or in 1 week. But we've kind of artificially made it has to happen by this time because of a town meeting vote.
But you see, it's, to my point of view, it's irrelevant. When this first came up in January, when Mr. DeFranza reached out first to Peter, and then Peter asked me to become involved to see if he could get on this town meeting, I checked with the Community Preservation Coalition in Boston, and he said, no problem. You go ahead. If your CPC wants to approve some funding, you bring it to town meeting and you put in a contingency, and they suggested December 31st of this year to have these contracts signed. So I think that you're raising unnecessary red flags, and I think it's going to be very difficult. There was talk on the CPC before. Mr. DeFranza had come once before and withdrawn. Is he going to do it again? whatever.
That's not something we have control of.
The most important issue here now is the good of the town of Wenham, and that is to build some affordable housing, not only to prevent 40B, but I heard from Virginia Rogers last night. She does tax returns at the library for elderly people in town. And she was telling me about a poor gentleman in Hamilton who has an income of $23,000 and a tax bill of $6,700. We have people in our community who need a place to live. If we put this off for another town meeting, it's another year, and state funding is always at issue, and it's going to delay. What did he say? Maybe 4 or 5 years before this would be up and running? It's going to be even longer. I don't see what we gain.
Why are you so excited, Harry? You just told me a minute ago, or 10 minutes ago, that he'll have the document tomorrow.
Well, he's hoping to.
No, you said he would have it tomorrow.
He said he expects to have it tomorrow.
Okay.
We shall see.
Well, if he doesn't have it tomorrow, he's got 2 more days for Friday at noon. It's a Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. He's got 2 more days after that. And, I mean, he's been telling me personally, it's almost there. It's almost there. It's almost there. Well, guess what? It needs to be there.
That's your take that it needs to be there. I believe
I'm one person voting. I'm just one person voting, but I'm one person of 3 here. The Board of Selectmen, and the CPC has already made their recommendation in the warrant book to the town. The Selectmen and the FinCom also have the ability to give a recommendation to the town. I'm just saying, I'm for this project as long as there's an agreement between the 2 parties that's legal.
Let me ask you what this motion was. Did you not say you were going to pull this from the warrant?
No.
You didn't. All right, you made it.
We would make a motion on town meeting floor.
Pass over, same difference.
No, because passing over requires a vote of the town meeting.
Town meeting has to vote.
So we
on
would
the
make a motion at the town meeting to pass over this article for this town meeting. And then the people would have to vote.
on
They would
it.
have to vote.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So if everyone disagrees with us, we'll be outvoted.
Right.
I think you're making a big mistake, but...
Perhaps so, but it is feeling more and more difficult to even have a conversation about it because we don't know what we're saying. So the notion of approving this and then waiting till December 31st to see the document, that's really uncomfortable for me, and it would be uncomfortable for me to defend at town meeting because we don't know what's in it. It's like, here, don't read this, but approve it. I think...
You have all those contingencies.
We do, but we shouldn't need them.
Right.
We shouldn't need them. And I think the most onerous of the contingencies is the first one, and that is a settlement agreement, which everyone wants to see and is expecting. Just doesn't seem to be lining up with this town meeting.
I don't know why everybody has to see it. It's between the plaintiffs.
Well, the term sheet included a provision that required $1 million
Yes,
of town funding to move.
Exactly.
So if that number changes, wouldn't that be an important
Town would want
fact
to
to
know
know when they're acting on a request for $750,000?
I don't really know how they can sign that since they're only requesting for $750 now.
Again, another question. I don't actually know how they could have signed a term sheet compelling groups that are completely out of their control, town meeting, CPC, Affordable Housing Trust, whatever, that the plaintiffs and the developer could put together a term sheet that compels the expenditure of money that neither party has any control over. Well, and it could be gone, literally could be gone, right?
Andrew DeFrancis' presentation to the CPC was, this is a go as far as he's concerned, as long as he can get $1 million out of the town.
Yes, but...
That was part of his presentation, right?
Well, his original presentation to us was for $1.35 million.
Yeah,
you mean the 5 years ago one? This one.
The most recent presentation.
To the CPC, he asked the CPC for $1.3 million?
$750,000,
okay.
And he said, it's in the document, he planned to ask the Affordable Housing Trust for $600,000.
Yeah. But he wants
he put in that binding agreement that at least $1 million from the town.
Right. Well,
right.
I thought I was saying the same thing you said, but I think,
well, so but the point is,
But he hasn't submitted an application
He
to the Affordable
hasn't
Housing
submitted
Trust.
an application to the Affordable Housing Trust.
We don't know.
So we don't really, that's the part of the term sheet that, from the town's point of view, concerns me the most. The rest of them are literally
There is a lot
zoning
of
things.
uncertainty going on, and I do understand everybody's angst over all of this. Myself, I'm still back to where I said a few minutes ago, I think I would allow DeFranz's group to make a decision.
That's right.
And inform us what their decision is. Are they going forward with a document of agreement between themselves and the plaintiffs, or they don't have it yet and it may be some weeks off?
I don't think they know the answer to that.
Correct.
Right.
And we just need to,
So-
I think we just need to let him know that we don't want to find out one way or the other at 11 o'clock on Saturday. So
I
could you?
told him that at the end of the
Yeah,
warrant
so you
hearing.
could
So
you
that's
please-
literally what this motion is saying, that we need to see a fully executed agreement between the plaintiffs and Harbor Light before, by noon on April 5th, to give us, the towns, the council, everyone enough time to, if it's forthcoming, to look at it and understand it. And if it's not forthcoming, then we feel, I feel that it's going to create more confusion and less ability to pass this on town meeting floor. And I'm fully in favor of as a
Town
Board of
meeting
Selectmen.
does want certainty.
Yeah.
They're guided by
S-
certainty,
so-
not uncertainty.
Right, and that's, I've said this about many issues over the years, and this is a big one. So, yeah, we let them, certainly we give Harbor Light and the plaintiffs, again, we have to remember there are two parties here. We give them information saying, it's time now. If you can't have it, if you don't think you're going to have it by noon.
Yeah,
then
don't wait till the door closes.
Don't
to
wait.
Find out you want to get through.
If you want to pull it, fine.
And I've been assigned by the board to speak to this, not this right here, but as I was preparing remarks to favorably recommend this to be approved by the town, and I'm going to give reasons why, and that. But I'm not comfortable doing that, trying to answer a question. Mr. Wilhelm, you're urging us to vote for this, but there's no agreement between the two parties. I don't want to be in a position to have that question asked of me. And somebody of the 300 people there is going to ask that. And I'm mumbling up in the microphone, well, it's okay, we got contingencies, and it's not okay.
No, you would say if they don't get this document signed, the deal is dead. For this year, they won't get their money. I don't see what the downside is to that.
Right.
We're
Well,
not writing them the check tomorrow.
They could be, they could be debating this for next year.
Right.
Well, they've been
Fine, it'll be
debating.
another year before the check stays here. It's not going to any other organization or any other application in a year.
That's kind of the point, too. I mean, that was the point of a lot of the contingencies, is that we don't want to tie up this large amount of
Yeah,
money.
but you're not tying it.
No, it won't be tied
It's
up
too
until
late
after.
already now for another application until the next town meeting.
Well, only if the CPC decides that.
Well, we can't have
CPC is-
another town meeting unless, we're going to have a special town meeting?
Do you know, I think we could. I think this is a conversation that, I think people are so afraid that this is, that's why I was surprised to hear you say that this is the end. This is not the intention.
No, I put it this way. My point to DeFranza was, should you just, Jack told me the comment that he made going out the door, he might pull it. My point to Mr. DeFranza is, if you pull it, I hope that it would be a permanent. I mean, in other words, not to come back again for a third time or whatever. Either do this now or not.
And I, for myself,
Or let it play out. Let it play out.
well, I think, and I can't speak for this board, I can only speak for myself, that if this is not the end to me, so if for some reason this does
part of the
not
sausage making.
get voted on at town meeting, I don't see that means that's the end. I would be fully interested in a conversation at any time that made sense to have a special town meeting if everything is ready and this is an important issue.
I think that this new complex that's being built in Beverly, that is seemingly to have gone through much more easily,
Well, it's Beverly.
is souring them. I can certainly
I'm not
understand
sure
that.
why you said that.
I think that this is a win-win for the town if we can get it through, and I think we should bend over backwards to be helpful to Harbor Light, to pull this. It is so beneficial to the town. Just remember, we have 17 units at houses at Spring Hill coming online. We're going, and we've just been talking about the school budget and the impact on that. If we get this, let this fish out of the pond, and we get a 40B developer in here, our tax rate will double.
You know, Harbor Light could have come to an agreement 2.5 years ago
No.
with the plaintiffs. It didn't take 2.5 years to come to, you know what? So he bears some responsibility for having this thing go on as long as it is. And that, when were we notified that there was an agreement between the parties?
It was early January
I
for the
want to say
term
January
sheet.
9th.
Yeah,
Or thereabouts.
mediation, yeah.
That's almost 3 months ago.
But, you know, there are a lot of both parties. And, you know, so I don't really want to get into a conversation about the project tonight. We really don't have time. But there are a couple of things, Harriet. Being on the Affordable Housing Trust, we've done a lot of work lately in a plan. And I don't share the fear that you seem to have about horrible things that would happen if this project didn't happen. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I'm not afraid of it not happening because there's a very clear plan that the Affordable Housing Trust has to reach our 10%.
A multi-year plan.
It is a multi-year plan, but it's a 5-year plan, which could be as long as it takes for this. I mean, we've seen a project.
Get protection earlier within the 5 years.
Well,
For the first
2.5 years, yeah. So, but I guess the fear part of it, I think I'm just not afraid of that, and I
Fully agreed, Catherine. I think it would be beneficial if you took a little bit step back and keep in mind that the Harbor Light Group has spent enormous amounts of treasure and sweat for 3 years now, is it? Whatever it's been.
Four,
5
four.
years.
And in
Five.
litigation for 3.5, so
Right.
they first
Yeah.
began about 4.5 years ago.
They have a lot to lose to walk away from this, and
But
so
they may do it.
And I think that should
would
be their
find that-
choice.
But that's their choice. I would find that hard to believe, knowing what I know about what they've done.
I want to just leave you with the one thought that I think that if you do decide to do this, that you involve the CPC in your discussion, because I think you have usurped them. It's a bunch of 9 very hardworking, very spirited people, and I think they should be involved.
They're part of the partnership, absolutely.
Yeah, but not in this motion. I would at least have you all contact them or email them or do something.
This is a town vote. Anybody in town could disagree with us, okay? And including all of the members of CPC, they can get up, when we do this, the moderator's gonna say, anybody else want to comment? Everybody in the CPC can get up in the microphone and speak against this.
Peter, could you
No.
inform the CPC? I don't want to get involved in an open meeting law violation. Could you inform them if this motion is passed, what the selectmen have done tonight, so they won't be blindsided on town meeting floor?
I'll take direction from the board.
Yeah, I was going to say, so is the board okay with the CPC being informed that this motion, should it be approved?
I'm probably I know, but
Well,
because they
I
listen.
know, I mean, Peter does
Yeah, this
take
is a-
direction from
yeah,
us. I have no problem with the CPC being informed.
The
Well,
one,
maybe that'll be helpful. Maybe they'll call up Andrew DeFrancis themselves.
if I could just make one
Yeah.
point. We've talked about the contingencies. We've talked about the fact that one of the contingencies point to the having a fully executed settlement agreement. I do want to clarify that there is no deadline for that settlement agreement to be executed.
I know.
So
Again,
It's-
we're out of control on that one as
it's
well.
not as if we've said,
Right.
and all of the other elements, steps along the way to move forward depend on that settlement agreement being executed. Because then the court would, there'd be a joint motion to remand back to the ZBA. ZBA would take up the comp permit. There'd be an application for the Affordable Housing Trust. All those things would
Can happen.
waterfall from there. None of them can happen if the settlement agreement isn't finalized and executed, and there is no set date certain included in the contingency for that settlement agreement to be finalized. So just something, I think, for the board to
The plaintiffs
understand.
and the Harbor Light have been going back, I just said it a minute ago, for over 2.5 years. And that the issue was the size and the location, 3 stories versus 2, moving back, the same, it took them 2.5 years to get to this point. I don't want them to take another 2.5 years to have a final legal document, which you could. There's no time, as you pointed out, there's no time limit in there. No. I'm going to be embarrassed on the time floor if somebody says, well, Mr. Wilhelm, Selectman Wilhelm, whatever, couldn't they take another 1.5 years to, yes, I suppose they could. Right. And well, you'd be happy with that? No, I wouldn't.
There's a court date, presumably.
The court they can always move it forward and say, okay, we're working on a judge. We want a 6-month. Judges would like to have extensions. Right. They're not looking to be rough.
And I don't think that, I think to your point, we're not setting a date by which they have to settle. We're just saying, in order for us to feel comfortable moving this forward as selectmen at town meeting, if it's going to settle, we need to have it. If it's going to be on this town meeting, we need to have it by noon on Friday.
My point is that there's a lot of tolling contingencies.
Yes.
But there isn't a starting date for those.
Oh, right.
So we say, once the comp permit is issued, then a building permit has to be pulled, just before a year.
So you say this is contradictory to itself.
Well, no, so I'm saying that hypothetically, if this is approved, those contingencies are going to protect against another year, and I'm not saying that ever would be the case, of settlement negotiations between the 2 private parties, in which case the money will just be spinning out there tied up with this project, and nothing, we're not going to be protected against unfriendly 40Bs, and we're not going to, the project's not going to be moving forward.
Right.
So the settlement, it's really important. It's really important. And, I hope it's done. And I hope if it's not done, given this information, that Mr. DeFranza makes a decision about what he wants to do. And if he wants to request that it be passed over, I don't know if he can actually withdraw an application at this point. I really don't know the details of how that would work. He will have an opportunity to do that.
So I guess that's a question for the CPC, is if sometime between now and the end of the week, the application is withdrawn, would the CPC make the motion to pass over?
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew obviously can't make that motion.
That would be the appropriate way to do it. We have a meeting scheduled for, believe it or not, 1:15. That's to accommodate various people. And we have a category of new business, and I think that would, and an old business under one of them. Here's some new information that's come in. That Francis suggests that he's not ready, and we would.
But he may do nothing.
Right. So if that
he may do nothing, and then it was still in the same bind we've been talking about for the last hour.
So I think the CPC does get involved if Mr. DeFranza comes back, if the applicant comes back and says, time out.
Yes, exactly.
I can't make this
then
happen.
We pull it.
Then he goes to you and you pull it.
Exactly.
If he does not, to your point, by noon on Friday, if we know we have no new information by noon on Friday, then the selectmen take an action.
I would rather that instead of sending him what you crafted a few minutes ago, that you send him a letter saying, some version of, we believe it would be in your best interest if you do not have this agreement, that you go to the CPC and pull your application.
I don't want to encourage him to pull the application. I just want him to get the damn thing done. And that.
Well, he's trying his best. He said he thought he had it today. He's thinking, but he'll find out tomorrow.
I don't want
he doesn't do it by himself, is the thing.
That's his business with the plaintiffs.
You didn't talk to him?
I've reached out to him today. I did not hear back from him.
Okay.
And a letter would take 2 days to get there. We want to send an email.
Yeah, I'm sending an email tonight.
So unless we have new information, it's 8:45.
Yep.
Anyway,
thank you for listening.
Yeah, and we certainly will keep you up to date on everything that.
And Peter, if you would let the CPC
yes,
know.
Peter. I think we agree that Peter, it'd be fine for Peter to let the CPC know of our.
By the way, I wouldn't want to add that, but it's possible, for example, if we passed over this and the town agreed, that Andrew Francis and the plaintiffs could come up with an agreement 6 weeks from now, and we can
Right.
include, everything can be fine. We could schedule a special town meeting.
Absolutely.
You know?
Just this
That's my
item.
Just this
point.
item.
This is an
We don't have to wait
artificial,
another year or 2 years.
it's an artificial deadline for the agreement,
Yeah,
the town meeting.
to some degree, you're
And I
right.
think it might not make for the best agreement, a settlement agreement.
And that was to Harriet's point, when she reached out to the coalition, when Andrew, reached out to me about the fact that they were going to be seeking funding, or they would like to seek funding, and we'd already passed the CPC deadline. Coalition said, that's the CPC's jurisdiction, they can open and close that application period at their choosing. So that's fully within the discretion of the CPC.
Right. And I think, really, until some of the discussion last night, I expected that we would, even though we have this as a contingency, that we would have a settlement agreement in hand before we had to vote on it.
Mine too.
So, anyway, we have a
I move
motion.
I go home.
We have to,
Second.
and this motion that's before us has been seconded,
Yeah,
yes?
yeah.
So all in favor of
Aye.
the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. We'll make all the appropriate, Peter will make all the appropriate notifications, please.
Copy me on that, would you send them?
Yeah, I'm gonna notify the whole CPC.
Or are you going to copy the CPC on that letter? How are you going to structure?
Well, I would leave that to the discretion of the chair, because we want the whole CPC to know this, right?
And I would just copy the CPC.
So
Yeah, what I'll
normally,
probably do is I'll forward a copy of it. I don't want it to start a potential open meeting law violation
Right.
with the
Well, that's what I'm
CPC.
worried about.
right,
So I will forward a copy of the email that I send
Yeah.
to both Harbor Light and the plaintiffs,
Okay.
so that
Good.
Everybody knows.
everybody is in the loop.
So by
Okay.
tomorrow morning, everybody will know. Check your email.
Probably by today.
Well, hopefully by 9 o'clock.
poor guy. So now I'm
I don't know
completely,
about
so we
by now.
voted on that. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Well, that's always the easiest one. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you. Difficult.